Okay. Hello everybody to today's webinar series of the xServers. Today we have a webinar about the xRoute service. Before we start the webinar, I want to introduce the moderators. My name is Lars Moritz, and I am technical consultant of developer components, and my key accounts are ADAC, ClickSoft and Daimler. The PTV group is a software provider located in Karlsruhe with about 700 employees worldwide and is a market leader in routing and tour optimization. And the xServer comprises developer components dealing with geocoding, mapping, routing, tour optimization, sequencing, load optimization, map matching, and much more.
So my name is Bernd.Welter. I'm working for PTV since the year 2000. I'm a senior technical consultant in the field of the developer components, and I'm responsible for the webinars, for the forums, and for a lot of different global channels of communication for the know-how transfer.
And today responsible for the chat is Daniel Möwes. Daniel, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, welcome from my side. I'm Daniel Möwes, product manager for xServer. I'm here for you in the chat, so if you have any questions, just type away. I will either try to answer them directly or refer to our moderators, so they will be answered for the whole audience.
Oh, and hi everybody, I'm András Kovács from Nexogen, and we have two colleagues here as well from the logistic optimization team of Nexogen. So we are a software company in Hungary delivering optimization solutions all around the world, including logistics.
Okay. So I want to introduce today's agenda. We are first talking about feature layers, special data content that we can use for the routing. Then we go on with a high performance routing. That's a method to speed up the calculation time. And then we introduce some routing parameters and go on with toll calculation. And we will finish with break and rest rules. So the first topic are the feature layers. The first feature layer I want to introduce is the feature layer time zones. Time zones provide information about time at each point of the route. And this feature layer is necessary to be able to consider time-dependent informations. Another feature layer is a feature layer truck attributes, and this feature layer provides additional restrictions that can be considered for the configured vehicle, and that's especially important when you have truck routings. These truck attributes are, for example, the maximum height of a tunnel, the maximum weight allowed for bridges, or restriction zones where you are not allowed to enter when you are carrying hazardous goods.
Yeah. Okay. Just need a few seconds.
So I will just introduce the feature layers, and Bernd will show in some demo clients how they look in real life.
So here we go, I'm just capturing the screen from Lars. So one thing we'd like to show you is the content. That means where is data available. Let me just select the truck attributes. This is one of our test clients. For example, I'm just going to the city of Lille. And as you can see in the map, there's several red segments. If I get closer, then I also get additional icons showing that there is some weight restrictions on specific segments. Here is an axle restriction or a length restriction, or combined restrictions on these segments. So this map is just about showing you where the data is, what kind of data it is, and we can also consider this in the routing. I'm just preparing a little example. So for example, there's another test line. It computes a track from Luxembourg to the city of Karlsruhe. And let me show you this client. We've got to activate these truck attributes. Here we go. True. I will just remove what is not required at the moment. And I have truck attributes here. So it's calculating a track, and as you can see, not in the map but in the grid, this is first of all a list of all the segments that are used. And here in the additional road editor column, you can see that some of these segments have an additional, let's say, attribute value. Here, for example, we've got a height restrictions of 4 meters and 30 centimeters. And I can scroll through the whole list, but from a meta point of view, I just made some group by statements that show me, look, on this track, there is the following number of segments having these kinds of attributes. So 4 of the segments have a height restriction of 4 meters and 30, and some more have another height restriction in the other driving direction. So now let me change the values of my car. By the way, at the moment I'm not producing a conflict on the route, so this is another important mechanism. So now we'll tell that my car has a specific height of more than 5 meters. I can specify this value in the request, but also via server-side configuration. Now we can see that it produced some violations because the track now takes segments that are usually forbidden for that kind of truck. So I am telling the interface, don't take care of the violations or whether you violate such a restriction. You are allowed to use them right now, but show me where is such a violation in the response. If I parameterize that violations are forbidden, so they are no longer allowed, and I compute the track once again, you will see there are no violations. And if we look at the additional road editor segments, none of the segments that are used have an attribute that has a conflict with the properties of the vehicle. So much about truck attributes. So we can go back to Lars.
So after we have seen the feature layer truck attributes, we go on with the feature layer speed patterns, and speed patterns provides a set of patterns over time, and the speed patterns are used to incorporate time-dependent calculations. That means, for example, during a week, you can drive faster on Saturday or Sunday on some road segments than on Monday or Friday. And even on a single day, you have a difference between rush hour, like 12 o'clock, or the driving on night hours, for example, at 11 o'clock in the night. So during rush hours, the speeds you can drive are much lower than during the night.
Yeah, and for this I have another interesting example. First of all, once again on the map interface, here in the map in the center you can see that some of the street segments, or let me just remove the truck attributes. So now it's only showing the regular segments with green color, orange color or red color, and segments with red color have a, let's say, a bad impact on the daytime dependent traffic performance. So they are blocked, or you can drive there with a decelerated speed. And orange ones is medium and green means free flow, like that. And what you can see here in this test client is this map represents the context of 9 o'clock in the morning on December 26th, 2016. So that's a specific day of the week. We have the data for each hour and 7 days a week. So now let me change the time. So I'm just changing to 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. You can see that the number of red and orange segments decreases. And once we are around midnight, we have almost green almost everywhere. So that's just about to visualize that information in a map. So that's possible. And another funny example is, now I'm using this client here. This client computes one and the same waypoint lists, again and again, from the green flag to the red flag. What is important to know is that there is one big street from the north to the south that changes the driving direction twice a day. So that's some kind of a daytime dependent restriction with a very big impact on the routing geometry. And as you can see here in the final little message box is that depending on the context of the routing, the shortest driving distance was about 2.4 kilometers and the longest was 4.4 kilometers. So we have about 80% more driving distance between shortest and, let's say, less optimal time of the day. And in the context of the driving period, it's even worse. You can see that there is a very big impact. It's 3 times longer to drive on a specific time of the day. You can also see this in the diagrams on the left. This diagram has one bar for each routing that has been performed. Here is the flip from one road condition to the other. So this is happening for 5, or I think I did it every 2 hours, so it's about 8 hours. Then it changes to the less optimal direction, several hours in a row, and then we've got once again 8 hours in the optimal direction, and so on. That's it. So much about data-independent routings. Any questions so far about this?
Actually, can you tell us what is the source of this data and is it refreshed or updated from time to time?
What I can tell you about this is that we buy the data from TomTom, and that we can that is available for each hour of the day, and it's prepared in combination with a map update. So we, as you might know, we have about 2 major map updates a year. So at the moment we are working with 2017.1 map or 2017.2 map, and the speed patterns are updated together with a map. Later we will see some other content that is updated independent from the map version via other sources, but that's a topic for later. I hope this answers the question. You okay with that, Andras?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
The feature layer speed patterns is suitable for car routings, and especially for truck routings we have the feature layer truck speed patterns. The feature layer truck speed patterns have the same features but suitable for trucks. The next feature layer is the feature layer truck waiting times, and this feature layer provides data about waiting times for trucks at toll booths along a route. This feature layer makes it possible to consider time losses at these toll booths. The next feature layer is a feature layer, I think we have an example there.
Yeah, sure. I'll just capture the screen once again. I'm using the same client. By the way, most of the content we show you today is stored in what we call feature layers. So that's a specific container format provided by PTV. And now let's see what happens. Here we go. I'm in a specific region of France. As you can see on the map, there is several icons showing that there is some waiting time and we have different colors for these icons, green ones, red ones, orange ones. Once again, the color indicates the level of impact on the waiting time. So this container, this truck waiting times also depend on the daytime, of course, and at the moment we have the context of midnight, so you can see on top it's 0, 0, 0, and once again I'm changing through time, and then you can see some of these icons change their color from orange to red, and now we've got almost red almost everywhere, and that's 9 o'clock in the morning. So this is also data that is daytime dependent, and that's why we have to specify a date for the context of a routing as well. So much about this. I will hand over, or Lars, you can grab the screen once again.
Yes. So we have seen the struct waiting times, and the next feature layer I want to introduce is the feature layer general truck restrictions. And this feature layer provides implicit time information, for example, data about weekends or holidays or public days where you are not allowed to drive with the truck on motorways, for example. Another feature layer is the feature layer preferred routes, and it represents special sub-networks of the road network that are prioritized. For example, if you are driving with trucks with special loads or heavy vehicles, you do not really want to drive directly through cities. And so this feature layer prioritizes roads around the city where you can drive more comfortable with heavy vehicles. The next feature layer is a feature layer. The next feature layer is a feature layer traffic incidents. This feature layer provides live traffic information that you can use in your route planning, and that ensures that you can calculate correct arrival times.
Yeah, once again I have a sample. So maybe we will see further traffic incidents in one of the other clients later, but once again I'm using this generic map client that shows me that there is some construction site, that there is one lane is blocked and so on, one or closed, and we get this information also from TomTom. So we can include this in the map, and we can also use this in the routing, of course. So we will perform a detour if necessary, or just add some additional seconds on the driving time of a route. What is also important is that if you want to get this data, and that's if you compare it to the speed patterns, this data is updated every few minutes. So what we provide for this is a special plugin for the services, so you can perform an automatic background job that loads the traffic incidents into your xRoute server or into your xServer and updates the map. So compared to the speed patterns that are updated twice a year, this is very dynamic data, of course. You expect that to be refreshed every few minutes, and that's what's happening when you use this content update service plugin, which is available in the dev zone for download. Any questions about this feature?
I think you've already answered with the source of the data and the refresh rate, so
okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Not for this feature, but in general we have a question is how the feature layers are available and how to use them. In general, all feature layers are shipped with our map product, so they are available in your system, should be available right now. It's just a licensing thing, which feature layer themes are licensed for productive use, also for the SDK licenses. They are all usable. You can test them as you wish.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we switch to the next topic, and that is high-performance routing. In high-performance routing, you use a pre-calculated route network, and you can set up such a route network for a specific vehicle profile and a specific map. This pre-calculated search graph is less flexible than conventional route networks, but it has a huge advantage in accessing time. And when you address such a pre-calculated route network and it is not available, the xRoute server automatically switches to conventional routing when necessary.
Yeah, once again I have a sample about this. Here we go. For this I'm using a different client, a tour planning client, and this client will simulate a scenario like the one you can see at the moment. I can just enter the name of a specific city, then I perform a simple reverse geocoding, specifying a target size for the reverse geocoding, and once this is done, I'm performing routing matrix, which has about 2,000 in square, which is 4 million routings. So this is quite a large number, and now let's see how long it takes. Once the matrix calculation is finished, it will update the map on the right side, and then we see no longer Paris but Munich, hopefully. Oh, what's going on? Worst case, I have to restart the client. And that's what I'll do. Let me just have a look at my module. It's not started. Okay, I can prepare it from scratch, no problem. Then let's take Hamburg. So just to prove that it's going to work, I'm disabling all the optimization steps. And once the reverse geocoding is successful, it should calculate the matrix. What's going on? Okay, now it's calculating. And you can see that the speed of calculating the different rows of the matrix is quite fast. It takes some seconds until the results are displayed in the map. Now I'll just switch to another city. By the way, I'm not performing any kind of optimization, so I'm using my tour client just to simulate the matrix calculation and to show you what is the region that is covered by these addresses. So here we go. I've got the country code of Germany, so it's not going to work. Anyway, no problem. We can just switch to UK. So here we are, and now we're in London having more than 4 million routings in square. So questions about high performance routing from the audience, Daniel or Andras?
Yeah, one question in the meantime. Does this high performance profile support track attributes as well and all the other feature layers if they are used for the pre-calculation?
Yes and no. It depends on what exactly you expect from the results. Let me just show you a little technical view. I have to grab the screen once again. So when you perform a routing, PTV provides algorithms that take in several hundreds of parameters into consideration, whether it's specifying the behavior of the driver, whether it's specifying the dimensions of the car, and so on. This is a lot of attributes we can consider. And when you perform such a routing, one of the first things the server does before the algorithm starts is he calculates or determines the values for all these parameters. Here's just a little subset of parameters you can see in XML, and that's also a way how to provide a parameter setting to the server by using the XML generated on client side, sent through the API. Okay, long story. When you create the so-called search graph that Lars was talking about, then you have to specify a set of routing parameters. You have to specify such an XML document as a profile. So we provide a tool that you can use to create your own search graphs in combination with a specific XML profile and a specific map directory. And within the XML profile, you can also specify the additional data like the truck attributes that are mentioned here or the feature layers that are mentioned here. So the positive answer is yes, we can consider that kind of data, and the reason why I said it depends on what you want to do. For this routing or preparing of the search graph, you also have to specify, once again, date and time, a specific context of the routing. That means every routing in the distance matrix will then be based on a departure time of the same value for every location or for every elemental routing. So, and this could have an impact. I know that Andras, that your use case is about tour optimization. So you want to determine proper sequences or optimal sequences and dispatching of tasks to resources. And for that, you might need the daytime dependency in the matrix, which is a difference compared to a matrix depends on a specific time of the day. I hope you get the difference.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So if you just want to know what is the driving time and driving distance for each element in the matrix on a specific time of the day, then you can just create a search graph that reflects that scenario. If you want to consider this in tour optimization, it's probably not going to provide the results you want to have.
Yeah. Okay. And is there an opportunity? I know this probably this is a bold question, but is there an opportunity to have a request for a period of time and know what would be the most, the shortest route in that time frame, and when would that be?
That reminds me a little bit of the other test client I demonstrated more at the beginning of the webinar with the daytime dependent one-way street. If, for example, we're living in Karlsruhe here, and in Waldorf there is SAP, and if I want to determine what is the best time of the day to drive to work to SAP, it's not just returning, hey, you have to start 7:33, then you have just to compute different potential scenarios like my test client, like 6 o'clock, 6:15, 6:30, 6:45, and so on, and just determine the one with the optimal driving time or driving distance or whatever your criteria is.
Okay, so it should be done by hand, like doing a request for every single hour of the day or something like that.
Yeah. What you could also do, maybe I can prepare this, is you can specify with the daytime dependent routings, you can also specify, I want to arrive, let's say, usually we provide something like I start my routing on 6 o'clock in the morning, And then we can compute at what time of the day will you arrive when you start at 6 in the morning. But you could also parameterize, I want to arrive at my destination at, let's say, 8 o'clock, and this is then a destination time. That means we determine at what time of the day do you have to start your route to be at the destination at 8 o'clock. But that's not exactly the same as what you asked for, like the show me at what time of the day do I have to perform the route so I get the shortest driving time or driving period. It's just I want to be there in time. When do I have to leave my home?
Yeah, sure. It makes sense.
Okay.
Very well.
Okay, the xRoute server provides many parameters where you can configure the routing behavior. First, you can configure a trade-off between distance and time. Then you can use specific speed profiles for the routing. We provide standard speed profiles, for example, truck slow, truck fast, and you can configure a speed profile on your own. Furthermore, we provide a void and a preferred parameter. That means you can add bonus or malus value on segments, for example on toll or on ramps. You can avoid using ferries. You can configure that you want to avoid vignette roads or residential areas or low emission zones.
I can show some examples once again. So here is another routing client. I will calculate a route from Heilbronn to Karlsruhe. Let me show you where these cities are located. So this is a regular route here in the region, starting almost at PTV into the direction of Heilbronn. So with a regular, let's say, standard parameterizing, we join the highway over there. It's the A5. We drive to the north, here to the highway crossing, and then we turn to the east to go into the direction of Heilbronn. With a, let's say, regular car, or that's even with a fast track, it's worth driving a detour. So that's what we do. The straight direction, a straight connection would be driving through the countryside, but with this parameterizing, we take the detour over the highway. In terms of time and distance, the route is about 90 kilometers and requires about 90 minutes of driving time. Now I change the parameterizing to shortest track. So for example, I can set 20%. And what we get next is a tour or a trip that starts in Karlsruhe and takes a drive or a direction through the countryside. If we look at the meta values of this route, we see no longer 90 minutes, it takes 120 minutes, but it is also no longer 90 kilometers. It decreased the number of kilometers, about 18 or about almost 20 kilometers. So that's the difference between shortest and fastest driving time. And so, just to be very superficial, we have a lot of parameters influencing the behavior of the driver. That's also possible. I hand over to you, Daniel.
So as we have seen, we can configure this bonus and malus values on specific segments, and another example would be that you can avoid highways and that you can configure that you want to use urban areas and other segment violations. Another possibility is to configure exception paths. That means you can identify paths that you do not want to use during your routing.
I have a sample for this. Well, almost the same as we've already seen. Once again, the well-known track, taking the highway A5 in the south and then taking the A6 to the east. What I do next is I specify I want I do no longer want to use the A6, so I add an additional value of what we call a malus value. That's some additional costs for streets with a specific property. In this case, it's a specific street. We can also apply the same mechanisms on categories of streets, like all toll roads will be more expensive, all vignette roads or highways. Now, let's see what happens. I block the A6, and once again, it takes the tour over the countryside, because it takes a very short part of the A5. So I didn't block highways, I blocked a specific highway. And you can also use this, for example, if you want to block well, some kind of traffic jam that is not, maybe for whatever reason, not part of the live updated traffic info, or if you know some specific segments that you want to take into consideration because of a long-term construction, for example. Daniel, questions so far? Or Andras?
We're okay.
Okay. Another topic we want to discuss is...
I have one question here, sorry. I just read it. How does the malus value affect the alternative route chosen? What should be an optimal malus value for, let's say, truck attributes?
That's a good question. I mean, what I know is that the truck attributes in general is not taken into consideration by malus values, because truck attributes normally are, let's say, yes, no, you are allowed to use a segment or you're not allowed to use that segment. So you can activate violations. I did this in the beginning of the webinar. If you forbid violations, then it's no longer, then it's really the black and white decision. Are you allowed to use, are you not allowed to use segments? If you activate violations, the default value for additional costs of producing a violation against a segment is 50,000. And that happens automatically, because as far as I know, it's part of the default truck profile. 50,000. You can overwrite that value. I cannot give you another value. I can just say the default value we use for years is 50,000. I hope this answers the question.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we want to introduce the toll calculation. And the toll calculations enables us to calculate toll costs dependent on country, dependent on the vehicle profile and the distance driven in that country. And we are able to consider future toll scenarios as soon as we know that there will be some changes in the future. This will be available as a scenario in our toll data.
Okay, once again, some samples. I produced a much longer route now, so it starts in London. Immediately I talk British English, that's cool. And is heading for Istanbul, somewhere in Turkey. So what we see on the left is that we are using a large number of countries, starting in Great Britain, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and so on. And for all of these countries, we can consider the toll information. Let me see, here we are, toll totals. For each country, we can give you some kind of report how much toll has to be paid over there in the different currencies, but you can also parameterize that you want to have all the information in one currency, which is then euros. So let me just calculate that once again. Here we go. So then you can see everything is given in euro, and we just computed the toll costs or into that currency. You can also create a report like how much money do we have to spend to a specific toll provider, or maybe different toll object like the tunnel. You can get a very detailed list of toll elements. For this, I prepared a virtual country that has the ID -1, which is just the sum of all the other countries, and then I can have a look at all these detailed toll segments. So this is once again a report: Germany, toll collect, Austria, ASFINAG, and so on. And if we look at the map, here we go, then we can also display a large number of toll sections. So green icon means joining such a segment, red one is leaving the section. Here we go, that'll be more for the color guys. Big parts of the track are toll relevant, and we also see this in the data. So that's about toll. What is also possible is, maybe I have a hit right now, so let's have a look. The total sum of the toll is at the moment is 560 euros. So I will just manipulate the routing to perform it in the context of 2014. Once again, 516, and hopefully I will have a change in the toll tariffs. 516. Oh, it's the same. Oh my gosh. Now let me just go to 2020. What did we simulate before, Lars? Another demo effect. Okay, but anyway, we can consider that information in the toll calculation. So believe me, it's amazing. We can consider this. Just need a sample, or maybe somebody from the audience has an example that you would like to see. Just let me know, and I will simulate it. Daniel, question about this?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
The next topic we want to show are break and rest rules. If you want to perform a routing that obeys certain laws and regulations, we provide the possibility that you can consider these periods of break after a certain time of driving that is according to EU regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have an example for that.
Yeah, I just take the same route from London to Istanbul, and I activated to use calculate tour, which is one of the methods that are available. And I requested a so-called time events. What we can see in the result is that the driver should have a break at specific points in time and at specific segments on the route. So we have the segment index where he should do such a break. And I've got this also on the map, visualized. Here we are with the layers. There is one layer with the time events. You see some small bars. Let me just reduce the visibility of the background information and of the route itself. Then we can see here is a break, for example, and here is one. These are these time events. Of course, you have driving and brake at the same location because he has to do the brake over there. And well, that's what we can consider in the routing. By the way, it's also possible to consider this information in our tour optimization. So let me just prepare one more scenario around Cologne, just 20. I'd like to have major objects, once again with the DEMA. So that's probably a bit too poor. Let me increase the detail level, 13. So, and give that guy some more time, 5 days of a week. Here we go. And we've got quite a long route, 1,500 kilometers, 3 days. At the moment, no specific tour events. Well, there is some breaks, but that's when we change from one day to the other day. And now we'll activate those break and rest rules, which are quite complex. Here we go. There it is. So-called driver regulations. So I can activate the driver has to have a break of 15 minutes every once in a while or half an hour. And we have the weekly rest intervals and the daily rest rules and so on. Activated. Then we have a look at the tour events, and then we see some daily rest. We see some break, waiting, service. So this is just providing additional breaks somewhere on this route. Once again, daily rest and so on. This is available in routing, standard routing, and also in tour optimization or sequencing.
Just one question.
Yeah.
When the xRoute plans or calculates with the break rest rules, does it consider if there's a suitable place in that particular spot which shows that the rest should be taken?
At the moment it doesn't. So what it does at the moment is it computes the driving time and driving distance, and then a specific component, I call it renders the breaks into the existing route. So we just determine what is the optimal place in the segments list. What is the optimal index for the breaks, but we are not linked to a database with parkings or something like that. That could be the case in the future. So you're not the first one who asked that question, but currently it's not available.
And so basically you more like render these kind of rests on the timeline of the tour itself.
Yes, that's what I meant by we determine the index of the segments where it's time to have a break.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay, any further questions from the chat?
Oh, emissions.
There's a question about combination of different features in routing. When you consider driving driver regulations and break and rest rules and want to consider different feature layers, what are the possibilities and limitations?
Okay. As far as I know, the calculate advanced tour, so the routing methods that consider the break and rest rules, they cannot be combined with feature layers, with the time-dependent feature layers. So this will produce an exception.
Yes, with static feature layers it is possible, and that is due to the fact that there is a conflict between time-dependent feature layers and the driving rules, and what has to overrule what. That's a logical dilemma we run into.
Yeah. So, further questions from you, Andras? Probably not, then it's up to you.
No, okay.
I think, yeah, we were just discussing something, but no, we're okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so we provide additional resources for information. First, we have the consulting for development components.
Let me just interrupt before we end up. I have 2 more features that are not part of the slides.
Yes, of course.
Feature number 1 is what you can already see here in the result. It's the elevation. So what we can do as an output of xRoute is we can also provide the elevations profile of a route. So you can determine whether the truck has to do very steep slopes, and that's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we can compute and return emission based on various standards. So some years ago, there was an initial approach of determining the output of carbon dioxide and nitrogen and whatever based on a standard that was called Handbook of Emission Factors. Here it's mentioned as HABEFA 2.1, and that is a standard that just computes the driving distance and multiplies it with specific vehicle characteristics based on this Handbook of Emission Factors. And then you can compute these values like ammonia, benzene, carbon dioxide, and so on. So this is a standard, and you can put this into your invoices as some kind of a report, for example. And there are, in the meantime, there have been various standards like more modern HABEFA standards or the Australian standard. So that's a standard that looks into site tables about, takes care of values of properties, physical properties of the trucks, and then multiplies them with the segment properties to get the final output. And the difference, one difference between HABEFA 2.1 and 2.3, 3.2, for example, is that the modern standard considers whether a segment is uphill or downhill. So it makes a very big difference whether you drive a route from, let's say, Stuttgart to Karlsruhe or to the other direction, yeah, or from Hamburg to Karlsruhe or from Karlsruhe to Hamburg. So this is done by these modern standards. There's another approach computing these emission output, and this approach is based on factors. So you can specify what is the consumption of fuel of your fleet, of an average vehicle, and so on. And this is what we call factor-based mechanisms or algorithms. So that, once again, different standards. There is a sense standard from, let's say, a global European perspective. There is a French approach, we have Australian approach and British approach. And well, these are available. That was just one more comment from my side about these standards and about the term of emission. It's just additional output. We do not reduce the emission or find a track that reduces the emission. We just multiply the algorithms to the existing route.
Okay, any more questions to this feature?
Yeah, can we have a question, not this regarding not this feature, but the feature layer and the exception path? Yeah. Is it possible to create a feature layer manually by adding exception path with time-dependent manner or restrictions, and then use that feature layer for planning?
Your use case reminds me a bit of the so-called road editor, which is an existing technology in xRoute. But we do not have an API where you can administrate or maintain the data in a feature layer. Maybe Daniel can give you some more strategic statement about this.
I thought also in the same direction as you. For me, it sounds like a first approach to have such a technique. Right now, we also wish to provide something like that. It's not planned, and it's also not that easy right now, but we're considering it, and I think, yeah, in the future I'm also keen to get something like that, so you are able to create feature layers in one or another way.
So does it answer your question, Andras?
Good to hear that it's somewhere on the roadmap. Okay. We hope it will be not that far away.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we provide consulting for xServers and development components. For the DACH area, it's Bernd.Welter and myself. We have support for development components. We provide a forum that's free of cost and it's in English language.
Let me just show you the forum. Maybe some of you have already seen it. Here it is. This forum is maintained mainly by the colleagues here in the headquarters, but also with contribution of the consultants in the other subsidiaries like Joost Klaassen in Netherlands, Julien Mami in US, and Daniele and Giovanni in Italy, and so on. And as you can see, there are different subcategories for each one of our modules, of our xServer modules. We have a different subcategory, but there is also one category for InfoStream. That's where we propagate new webinars, for example. You can see just 7 posts at the moment because I invented this webinar, this category just a few months ago. But there is also categories like for xServer administrators or for other products like PTV Drive and Arrive, or for those customers who want to use xServer Internet. So here it's about cloud topics like how to activate authentication and what is the throughput on the cloud, what kind of bandwidth do we need, and so on. Then we've also got a sub-forum for PTV Navigator. So this is our Android-based software you can use to, well, perform navigation even when you're offline. And if you're not sure, just use the generic questions forum for your requests. One thing I can just demonstrate as well is once you're logged in, usage is free of cost, you just have to register. You can specify, for example, you want to subscribe to one of these sub-forums. So if you're a specialist in geocoding, for example, then you can just go to the xLocate server forum and subscribe it, and then you will get a notification whenever somebody provides a new question or provides an answer to an existing question. And the forum is not only for discussions, we also provide short articles whenever we as consultants see that you have demand on, well, let's say, feature layers, reoccurring questions. It's like a bit a mixture between support, know-how transfer, knowledge base. So you can just look for solutions here if you want to look for traffic incidents, for example. Then you can first have a look at the forum, whether there is some articles that are relevant for you, and if not, just ask the question here in the forum. It's our preferred mechanism to give answers, so you can provide information to the community and strengthen the power of the community. And it's my baby, yeah.
And another source of information is the developer blog. And if you have any further questions, just contact your sales representative.
Yeah, one more comment about this. Today, you might have seen some technical things like the XML documents or specific values that have a malus with a specific meaning. The goal for today was to show you different use cases, different features, different topics, not only dealing with xServers, but also available in other products from PTV like Smart Tour or Map and Guide or Map and Guide Internet, which is based on xServers in the backend. So somehow I'd like to excuse that we offer this content today so late, because obviously we hit the point. We had a large number of registrations for the topic of routing, and in the future we will provide the webinars not only based on a specific xServer, but based on specific use cases. So maybe we have computation of driving arrival time and so on, and we can approach this with different products from PTV, and we will teach you or show you what are the use cases behind our software, and not only what are the technical parameters or interfaces you have to use for it. If you need more technical info, we can just use the forum or maybe have a one-to-one webinar. If you want to see what is possible, then we can approach this in generic webinars with broadcast level. So much from my side.
And
maybe one or two.
Sorry?
One or two things. First is, are the slides available afterwards, and is the video available afterwards? And second thing is, how about your test clients? Are they available?
Test clients are not public. The slides can be provided afterwards, so usually we give the slides to our marketing department, and the same is available with the video. So once the marketing has access to these documents, they are in charge to put them online, and then you can have a look at the slides or at the videos if you want. So much about this. Any further question, Daniel?
That's it from my side.
Okay, Andras, how about you?
We're okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So then it's time to come to an end. It was a great pleasure for Lars and me to give you the introduction into the features, and we will think about what could be the meaningful webinar for a meaningful topic for the next webinar. As you've seen in the forum, you can also join the forum and just ask for a specific webinar. Of course, it has to be a topic that is complex enough for a single webinar. It's not like, can you make a webinar showing us how to request all the house number ranges in a street by geocoding? That's too simple, by the way. Okay, so much from my side. Lars, anything from you?
I just want to mention the Fit for Profit in Heidelberg. It's in September the 20th and 21st, and you are welcome to join.
Okay. And it's also announced in the forum. So much about this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andras and Daniel, for helping us regarding the topics, and we'll see you all again. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. See you.